Hola everybody, ¿qué tal? ¿Cómo estás? Señor G here, this time talking about the subjunctive or the subjunctive mood. You might be asking, what's all the mystery here? Why do you save it till the end to talk about? Well, there's really no mystery here. We're just changing moods. Where up till now we've been talking about things that have been factual or certain or true from the speaker's point of view. Now we're changing moods to something where, from the speaker's point of view, we're introducing doubt, his wishes, his intents, how he feels about things that are contrary to reality. The good news is we've already had some experience with uncertainty, doubt, emotion, especially from the speaker's point of view. Remember commands like sit down, or eat your vegetables, or even have a nice day. We really couldn't be sure the person would sit down, or eat his vegetables, or even have a nice day. The even better news is that you're going to recognize some of the conjugations when we were using both familiar and formal commands. All right, here's some examples in English that we're going to look at again later in Spanish. First one, they hope that the Bears win the Super Bowl. Well, they hope. You can see them clasping their hands together, hoping and hoping that the Bears win. But whether or not the Bears win the Super Bowl, that's in the future. Next one, my teacher prohibits that we eat in the library. Well, maybe you can see my teacher wagging her finger prohibiting something. That's a fact. But whether or not we eat in the library, if we obey her or not, who knows? And finally, she wants that her boyfriend opens the door. We can see her wanting, maybe her hands are on her hips, expecting that the boyfriend will open the door. But who knows if he's actually going to see her and do it. When we're learning a new tense, there's really two things we need to know. What's the meaning of what we're saying? What is the difference between the preterite tense and the imperfect tense? What are the progressive tenses? What are the perfect tenses? Things like that. Once we know that, then we can move on to conjugation, and that's when we know how to put the accent marks in and when to say aba and abamos and ando and things like that. Up until now, whether we knew it or not, we've been learning tenses in the indicative mood. What we're talking about there is from the speaker's point of view, things that he believes to be true and to be real. For instance, in the present tense, we're looking at her right now. She is eating the pizza. Or definitely last night they studied Spanish. Or even talking about in the future, we are definitely going to that White Sox game. So that's tenses. We're talking about something happening now, or before, or it's going to happen. As opposed to moods, where we're talking about how the speaker feels about it. Till now, we've really only been talking about the indicative mood, talking about from the speaker's point of view, things he believes to be real or true. Now we're turning to the subjunctive, where we're introducing more doubt, things that are contrary to reality. Wishes, emotions. The more examples you see, the more you'll get a feel for it. After all, we are talking about a mood. And to get a better feel for it, we're going to concentrate on the present subjunctive and leave the other subjunctive tenses for other videos. The best way to demonstrate the subjunctive is through complex sentences like you see here. It's also the most common way that the subjunctive is used by native Spanish speakers. Complex sentences are really two sentences joined together by a word. In this case, that word is that. They have what's called a main clause. In this case, they hope, my teacher prohibits, she wants, and something called a dependent clause. Bears win, we eat, boyfriend opens. Depending on what the message is in the first clause, the main clause will let us know whether or not we use the subjunctive in the dependent clause. Each of these sentences can be written with a formula, as you see up above. Subject 1 plus verb 1 plus the word K plus subject 2 plus verb 2. If you can identify your sentence with this formula, the next thing you'll want to do is look at the main clause and see if there's any message there that lets you know that you'd use the subjunctive in the dependent clause. In these cases, they hope, esperar, teacher prohibits, prohibir, she wants, querer, are all words that signal that indeed you will be using the subjunctive in the dependent clause. Wow, that was a mouthful. Let's review the highlights. A lot of times, not every time, but a lot of times you're going to find what are called dual clause sentences where you have a main clause and a dependent clause separated by the word K. You're going to have subject 1 plus verb 1 plus the word K plus subject 2 plus verb 2. You're going to see that the main clause is in the indicative mood. We're really just going to be looking at the present indicative, although in future videos we'll also look at the present perfect, the future, and commands. And the dependent clause will be in the present subjunctive, but we'll also be looking in the future at the perfect subjunctive. In any case, in the main clause, you are going to be looking for signal verbs that let us know that we're going to be using the subjunctive in the dependent clause. Here's a quick peek at conjugations in the subjunctive. The little angels there, because these are conjugated regularly. You may want to go back and look at the companion video on how to conjugate in the subjunctive before moving on. Let's go back to our first example sentence and apply the present subjunctive. The infinitive to win is ganar. We'll first conjugate in the present tense and use that as sort of a template or springboard to give us the conjugation in the present subjunctive. So, ganen. And our sentence goes, ellos esperan que los Bears ganen el Super Bowl. It follows our formula. Ellos is subject 1, esperan verb 1, separated by the word K, subject 2, Bears, and verb 2, ganen. The first clause or the main clause is in the indicative, and the second clause or the dependent clause is in the subjunctive. And esperar is one of our verbs that signals that we use the subjunctive in the dependent clause. I think we already know the infinitive for to eat is comer. And let's put the present tense conjugation down, nosotros comemos, and use that sort of as a template to help us conjugate in the subjunctive, comamos. And the sentence looks like this: mi maestra prohíbe que nosotros comamos en la biblioteca. Once again, we have subject 1, maestra, verb 1, prohíbe, separated by the word que, and subject 2, nosotros, verb 2, comamos, And that's in the subjunctive because the first clause or the main clause was in the indicative with a verb that signals, prohibere signals that we use the subjunctive in the dependent clause. And our third example, even though we might say in English she wants her boyfriend to open the door, we say it this way to illustrate the subjunctive in Spanish. We know that opens or to open is abrir. Once again, let's conjugate it in the present tense to give us sort of a springboard or trigger for the present subjunctive. The sentence then reads, Ella quiere que su novio abra la puerta. Here again it follows our formula. Subject 1, ella. Verb 1, quiere. Followed by or separated by the word que. And subject 2, novio. Verb 2, abra. The first clause, the main clause, is in the indicative. And it has a signal verb, querer. And that signals that the second clause, the dependent clause, will be in the subjunctive. Again, we will learn more of the signal verbs a little bit later on. There are some key factors that we need to look for. There must be a change in subject. There must be uncertainty or doubt, etc., the things we've been talking about. And there must be those subjunctive signal words. In these sentences, there are two verbs, but no change in subject. So we're going to want to use the infinitive in the second verb. For example, they hope to win. Ellos esperan ganar. The teacher prohibits eating. La maestra prohíbe comer. Or she wants to open the door. Quiere abrir la puerta. Doubt and uncertainty trigger the subjunctive. These compound sentences, but not all of them, will use a subjunctive. In the first one, Felipe doubts that they study a lot, so that's a subjunctive. But in the next sentence, I don't doubt that they speak English in secret, so there's the indicative. The third one, they don't believe that you eat butterflies. There's doubt there. But in the fourth one, I know that you have many butterflies. There is no doubt there. There's certainty, so we use the indicative. And finally, there are signal words that we find in the main clause that let us know that we use a subjunctive in the dependent clause. This is not the complete list, and you'll want to go to the companion video to find out a more expansive list of words and phrases that will signal the subjunctive. Let's include just one more use of the subjunctive here, and it's in the form of impersonal expressions that you see in green. It has a formula as well. It goes S plus an adverb plus K plus subject 1 plus verb 1. In the first two examples down below, you see it's important that you open your books, and it's impossible that I finish the Spanish homework. In those two cases, we use the subjunctive because we're not sure that those things are going to happen. But the final example says, it's certain that she has my textbook. We are indicating something that is fact, therefore we use the indicative. More of that on a companion video, as well as other uses of the subjunctive. For right now, see if you can guess on these following 12 sentences whether or not the indicative or subjunctive will be used, and secondarily, if you can conjugate. Here we go.